Gators week visits with Austin Price of VolQuest's and On 3 here on RKW. Ramon Foster, Kayla Anderson, Will Bowling. Austin Price on the phones with tons to talk about out of Knoxville, Tennessee. Austin, what's up? How are you?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you all doing?
Hey. We are good, and there is a lot to get to, isn't there, for Tennessee football right now?
I would just say we've reset, Austin, okay? We're not good. We've reset, okay? That's a whole lot better.
All right, starting over.
Perfect. Well, before we move on to Florida, though, Austin, what has been the biggest thing you feel like Tennessee is looking to change out of the loss to Arkansas, starting offensively? Where do they have to improve? How do they go about fixing some of the issues that plagued them on Saturday night in Fayetteville?
Yeah, I think for Tennessee's offense, it starts with everybody. Nico has to be better. The offensive line has to be better. The receivers have to be better. And, what we as, fans or media people see and what is intended for the play, can be two totally different things. We may see a mess up by the offensive lineman, but in reality, it's the mess up of the running back or the tight end. Or we may see, oh man, Nico, that was a terrible throw by Nico. But in reality, Nico threw the ball where it was supposed to be, and the receiver ran the depth of the route 4 yards too far. So, again, what Josh Heupel and Joey Halsley and the team are watching after the game and what we watch during the game can sometimes be two totally different things. So, again, cleaning the little things up, not having pre-snap penalties, not having a lineman downfield on the first play of the game when you gain 15-plus yards and kind of, would have had a chance to kind of get your tempo rolling. The running backs not missing, their block and letting Nico get hit too much. The offensive line being able to protect, really well. So, there are several different factors, I think, that, lead to things they have to clean up. So the answer is everybody. Everybody's got to be better this week, and they've got to be extra locked in. No wiggle room at this point.
VolQuest's Austin Price with us. Austin, does Tennessee have an effort problem on the offensive line? Because some of those videos of Lance Hurd specifically do not look great late in that game.
I don't think it's an effort problem.
Okay.
I think Lance is a younger player. Didn't play at LSU outside of a few snaps, and hadn't really played here through the first month. He missed a month of action after the NC State game. He had a month off, and probably a little bit of game shape. And this is a kid that's still got lots of talent, and to think he doesn't would be wrong. I think it just has to keep playing. It just reared its ugly head the other night, a little bit. He wasn't terrible, everybody wants to pinpoint that one play at the end of the game. That one play still gained 47 yards or whatever because Nico was an athlete and spun out and hit Dante Thornton. But, you're never judged on one play, okay? And that's really unfair for everybody just to put that one play out on Twitter. What was James Pierce's worst play the other night? He played fantastic. But if you only put the one play out there, would everybody go, oh? So I think it's Lance just needs more reps. He needs more games. Unfortunately, he's going to get it right in the fire of SEC competition, home game of Florida, home game of Bama before another bye week.
So, Austin, offensively, in terms of the explosive plays down the field, do you feel like Tennessee is calling explosive plays, trying to push the ball deep down the field, and it's not working for whatever reason? Or what can Josh Heupel do to open up this offense from his perspective? Do you feel like they are trying to take enough deep shots down the field?
I think some are called and they never get to it because the protection hasn't been there. And then in some ways, I think the routes have been set up to where they're either uber short or uber long, and, the middle range routes aren't there. Either way, Tennessee's, got to be able to, help its young quarterback out, help its young offensive line, or younger players on the offensive line. Most of those guys are pretty old, out and, just change some things up, because obviously what's been happening isn't working. And, I don't. In talking to a few people this week, they suggested that the depth of the routes is something that might need to change to combat. To combat the 3-3-5, and so we'll see what they dial up this week if anything looks any different, and if they try to work the middle of the field more.
Austin Price of VolQuest's on 3 with us this morning talking Vols. Austin, we've seen a trend in games that the Vols have lost where they've, not the defense stay on the field for a very long time. The opposing offense basically play keep away. At what point does Josh Heupel and his staff decide to change that narrative to where they're putting the pressure back on teams? Because I felt like when Heupel first got this job, he put defenses up against the wall. Have they adjusted a whole lot more? Is he just trying to hold back for Nico's sake?
Yeah, I don't know if it's for Nico's sake. I don't believe that's the case. I think that he's tried to, all he heard was, well, you got to adapt, man. You can't just always, think about those losses early on at Tennessee. Everybody kept saying, well, of course, the defense was out there a million snaps, and, you just can't go tempo all the time and put your defense, stressed out like that. And I think that he's tried to adapt, much like Tim Banks has adapted in the back end of rotating more players. I think they probably rotate a little too much. Now they went from not rotating very much at all to rotating a lot. And now, on the offensive side of the ball, they went from a ton of tempo to, hey, let's slow it down. I agree with you, and I think that's what they've got to get back to. We talked about that on our Rocky Top Roundtable that comes out today. And, listen, do what you do best. If you're Tim Banks, you blitz a lot. Do it. If you're Josh Heupel, go tempo. And if that means the opponent gets 2 or 3 extra series because you end up going 3 and out more, but you put more stress and you get more points, it's worth it.
Yeah, it is. We're talking with Austin Price right now, VolQuest. Austin, Florida's starting safety this week said what they want to do is contain Nico and make him throw the ball. Is there something negative about making Nico throw the ball, or the reason they feel this way?
Well, I think that, you just, again, the last few games, Tennessee's offense, because of, the depths and all that, I think have, put a little bit of stress on Nico. I just think that that's what I think that's just a phrase, right? Like that's we got to stop the run. That's basically what they're saying. We're going to stop the run. We're not going to let you do what you did at NC State. And, if a young quarterback can beat you, then, it's just like in the NFL. Teams are, load the box to stop a really good tailback while, putting the pressure on the inexperienced rookie quarterback. It's a similar type deal. And so I think, it's just kind of a common phrase you hear. They're going to put it, on a young quarterback's back. And if he can beat you, he beats you.
Austin Price of VolQuest joining us this morning on RK Dub. Austin, I know in some situations the 2 quarterback system doesn't always work for teams. Right now, seems to be working a little bit more for Florida and Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway. What does this give, if any, confusion for this Tennessee defense?
I don't know if it gives confusion, Caleb, but I do think you have to change kind of how you play defense, depending on who's in the game. And so what it does is it can put a little bit of stress on the defense, but at the same time, you look across and you go, okay, Mertz, a guy that could make a play with his feet, more than likely he's going to stay in the pocket. Lagway, totally different deal. And so I think it's not like it's a surprise when they trot out there for the series who the QB is going to be and how you have to play them. So, I think, for Florida, it's got a little bit of traction here. But again, they've not really played any kind of true road games outside of Mississippi State, and I wouldn't call that the loudest place in the world. So, I think Tennessee fans have a chance to have a huge impact on this game coming up Saturday night.
Yeah, and Austin, it's interesting when you look at some of the results from last week. We speak about Vanderbilt upsetting Alabama. How does Alabama bounce back? Does Vanderbilt build off of it? With Tennessee and enduring this loss a little bit earlier in the season, I guess how much I know it's important, obviously, but just how much can you take from that type of loss on the road early in the season? Is it helpful that it maybe came earlier than later?
I think it depends. I mean, like if you're losing your first game later, I would think it's probably better because, I mean, you're not going to have as many losses on your schedule. And then in the old days, I think it probably would have helped you when it was a 14 playoff because you have a chance to rebound and build your way back up through the rankings. In the 12-team playoff, I still think you want to lose if you don't have to, but you know that, you know, losses are going to happen. I mean, everybody at Texas has a loss in the league. I mean, that's wild. You know, we're 5 weeks in. I mean, we're the first week of October and going into the second, and everybody has at least one loss except for one team. And that one team hadn't really played anybody of real merit to this point. So, because, I mean, Michigan's proven to be not very good. So, you know, what happens when they kind of get to their teeth of their schedule? So, I mean, I think for Tennessee, you can learn a lot, and you better learn a lot. You better learn a lot about your team. You better learn, you know, whether it's guys being more locked in, whether it's, you know, making adjustments on offense, figuring out protection, Nico having his eyes in the right place. All those things, you know, are teachable moments. And so I think, you know, for Tennessee, you want to learn a lot off of last weekend. And, you know, I think that you better because you've got a really, really tough stretch coming up here with the next couple of weeks. Even though Florida is, quote, down, they're still Florida, and they believe they own Tennessee. So they're going to walk in going, we always beat Tennessee. No matter how bad we are, we always beat Tennessee, and that's going to be their mindset. So they're going to play a little more free, which means you're going to get their best shot.
Austin Price, VolQuest's On 3, our guest this morning on Ramon, Kayla, and Will. Austin, what does Tennessee's wide receiver rotation look like on Saturday? The health of Brew McCoy, Squirrel White, Dante Thornton, all kind of in doubt a little bit against Arkansas at times. What do you think they do Saturday in order to either get those guys healthy and give them a week or put younger guys like Mike Matthews out there?
Well, I do think you'll see a bigger rotation. I based off talking to, you know, multiple people, Brew has every intention of playing. He's got a couple of ligaments, you know, hurt and a couple of fingers. I think they're going to splint it up. You know, he'll have gloves on. He get a little bit of an abdominal deal, but it's not anything super pressing. So if he can handle it, he's going to play. Squirrel White, much more in doubt. You know, I think this is a couple of week thing. And again, a lot of that will depend on how much he can handle. And then with Dante Thornton, I think Dante Thornton will be good to go. So, you know, again, Tennessee, it should be, I mean, they're dinged up, but I mean, it's not like they're going to be down like 3 or 4 bodies. And then, you know, they've got Brazel, they've got Mike Matthews all sitting there ready to, you know, take somebody's reps if guys can't go. So, well, I'm more interested if Squirrel doesn't go, who do they put in the slot? Is it Chaz Nimrod, or do they work Mike Matthews into the slot? And as of right now, I would say Squirrel probably is going to be listed as doubtful coming out later tonight, or definitely questionable, but maybe doubtful, you know, when the injury report comes out late Wednesday night. So, you know, again, who plays the slot? Mike Matthews, Chaz Nimrod, a combination of both? What do they do?
And that was my next question, Austin, too, about Mike Matthews specifically. It feels to me, from my very untrained eye, like he's got maybe more make-you-miss ability with the ball in his hand versus Squirrel White, who's got the straight-line speed and can beat you over the top. How could that change the way Tennessee uses that slot position if it is someone like Mike Matthews who has a little bit of a different skill set?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely could you know, change how they do things. I mean, that slot position is so important. When you go back to the Jalen Hyatt, you know, year in 22, I mean, you know, he torched people from the slot. So, I mean, is it that simple? You know, Will, I mean, could the offense just be unlocked with the right guy, you know, being put in that right position? I don't know. I mean, we've seen it before. All of a sudden, like, you know, a kid puts himself in, you know, they move a kid positions or a kid has to step in, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, you know, offense just looks totally different with him there. So, I mean, you know, I guess we'll find out, but we won't know until they play.
Austin, when you look at this past weekend, I do think the tempo of the offensive line was something that had to be corrected. What is, if you can or if you know, the practice been like as far as challenging those guys up front? If a Dane Davis does have to go in, if, you know, the correction of some of the bad we saw from Lance Hurd or finishing the whole game for John Campbell.
Yeah, again, I think Campbell's going to be like that all year. Sadly, this with the Bursa deal, I just don't think he's going to be one that plays the whole game, and that means Dane Davis and Larry Johnson have to be ready to jump in there and help Lance, and Lance has got to stay healthy. Listen, I don't know exactly what's happening to practice this week because I'm not out there. But and talking to a few people, I think that there's a strong push to try to get back to the tempo. But again, all that starts with no pre-snap penalties, no lineman downfield, no falling on the ground and not getting up and getting back to the line of scrimmage, and just little things. You have to do little things right, and that's not all on the offensive line. There's plenty of other guys on the offense that struggled, Saturday. So, to me, this isn't an offensive line thing. Yeah, they are part of the piece that determines whether you have success, and they didn't play very well the other night. But, a lot more goes into it than just those guys. So, I think, that's something that, I think Tennessee's just got to figure out offensively the continuity of all the parts.
VolQuest's Austin Price joining us this morning on Ramon, Kayla, and Will at Austin Priceless, covering Tennessee athletics for VolQuest and On 3. Excellent stuff, Austin. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Austin.
Thanks, Austin.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Austin Price, I think, giving us a lot of info that all the things we saw and all the things that we have been saying, hey, the tempo, deep passes, slot receiver. Josh Heupel's not
over
stupid.
the middle.
They get it, too. Yeah. The
Tight
depth
ends.
of the routes, that's really interesting to me because that makes sense as to why Nico Iamaleava's maybe holding the ball a beat too long. You shorten a couple of those routes. You let guys make plays in space. Maybe things go a little bit differently. We'll see.
The catch-22 of that is, well, if you are just simply throwing it short and they're up on it fast,
Yeah, right, exactly.
and it's a
100%.
catch for 2 yards.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be interesting, like you said, with the question about the rotation.
Yeah.
He says he thinks Brew McCoy is going to go and Dante Thornton, but the Squirrel White is a situation where that will be interesting. Do you see Mike Matthews, like you said,
I'd
in the
love to
slot?
see it.
That
It's
would
time.
be,
I think.
that would be good to get him going out there and find that connection.
For whatever reason, it's one of the critiques of Josh Heupel that I think is a legitimate one. They are not quick enough to go to young players sometimes and trust really young players. I think it's time to unleash Mike Matthews because that guy gives you something different. I asked it to Austin. I think with the ball in his hands, he can make you miss better than Squirrel White can. Squirrel White has outstanding, world-class straight-line speed.
Yeah.
I think Mike Matthews can catch a 5-yard route and turn it into a 30-yard gain more than Squirrel White can. Just my opinion.
I hope you're right.
I hope so,
It'd be
too.
good to see at least him out there.
I hope so, too. Coming up, a downside of college football conference realignment. There is a coach in college football who commonly complains. He is complaining about the runway in his airport that has changed their travel process to go across the country. And there's a stat that says that Big Ten teams that are traveling, not having a lot of success. We'll talk about that next.